Hello and welcome to another edition of Tech Trends. I'm Olayemi Odunuga. On this week's episode, we see how STEM education is challenging children to become the next generation of innovators by equipping them with tech-savvy skills. Also on this edition, Dr. Yele Okeremi, CEO of Precise Financial Systems, shares how we can deepen financial inclusion and the role fintech companies play. We'll give you more details shortly. Remember, this is a program that takes you on a ride in 25 minutes to seek out innovation and creativity that are unique to Nigeria.
To shape today's and tomorrow's future-proof worker, schools must teach specialized hard skills, such as the STEM skills that are high in demand.
Globally, the technology and innovation sector is growing rapidly, and the world is in need of bright minds that can generate ideas and solutions to power new innovations. Hence the need to introduce STEM education early enough so our young ones can meet the demands of the dynamic and evolving workspace.
Countries across the world are adopting a system where young children and teenagers are introduced to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics early enough.
As long as you pick on the parts, you can change the properties of that parts. Agree? Now,
Preparing today's children to become the innovators and inventors of tomorrow begins with STEM education programs, which is why for these young minds at STEM Mets, it's all about creative and computational thinking as well as innovation.
now fold your foil paper onto your popsicle stick.
STEM, that is, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is an acronym that was coined to address the current and future shortage of skilled workers in high-tech fields and the inadequate education of students in these areas.
Is the circuit closed this way? Because the positive and negative wires are not making contact, right? So now take a look at your LED lamp and try and let the popsicle sticks make contact with each other. See, this closes the circuit, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because the wires and the foil paper are conducting the electricity, the current from the negative and the positive terminals of our cell. Now, our experiment for today shows us how to close this cell using water and salt. So now, I'm going to hold the popsicle stick inside the water, and you're going to slowly add salt to the water. So add salt to the water. Just turn the salt in. Wait a minute. You need a significant amount of salt. So now water is a conductor of electricity, right?
Yes.
But the popsicle sticks are still not making contact in the water. So now slowly add some salt to the water and watch the LED lamp. Turn it in. Wait, observe the LED lamp. Can you see? It's lighting up. Now add more salt. You notice that the current, the LED lamp becomes brighter with the more salt you add to the water.
So if you have two popsicles, let me see.
So if you have two like that, so where is the second one?
And in order to keep track with the ever-changing technological trends, these children are exposed to the current and future opportunities in STEM. This opens their eyes to the exciting world of science and technology, while also ensuring sustainability and transfer of knowledge.
STEM is hands-on, it's project-based, it's practical application to real life,
It's moving away from cramming and regurgitating rote learning to a more creative way of teaching and learning. So I would say fast forward now 8 years, more schools are aware of it, more schools are incorporating some aspects of it into their teaching and learning, but I think we still have a long way to go. So STEM is not coding, and coding is not STEM. So oftentimes when parents and schools approach us, oh, do you do STEM, do you do coding? Coding is the T, the technology aspect, and it's just even one small aspect of it. So how are we doing? Well, a lot better than we were 8 years ago when we started. A lot of schools are still using it as an optional after-school program. We believe that it should be available to all children. So our dream is really for every school to have STEM as a subject scheduled in a timetable for the children, because all children should have access to developing those skills that the STEM education offers.
Chukwuyalu Delzo is an 8-year-old who aims to become a mechanical engineer. He believes that these classes are beneficial to his future ambition.
In STEM maths, I've learned a lot of things like science adventure with Kelvin, make game designing with Roblox Studios, and Minecraft with internet and electricity. And all this is going to help me become an engineer that I want to be.
The STEM approach is an effective method which helps in bridging the gap between theory and controlled practice for kids. It fosters their creative and divergent thinking and motivates young children to generate new technologies and ideas.
Our objective is to train them on how to think, not what to think. So developing creative thinking, problem solving. Our education system, unfortunately, hasn't changed in the last 3 decades or so. It's not matching, what is going on globally and educationally. So for us, it was important to find programs that is not just another cramming, but really hands-on applications. So the idea is to explore areas of creativity, which could involve science experiments, could involve sound, could involve design thinking, all around unleashing that creative mindset. If you're able to think and problem solve, you're able to, create, you're able to apply whatever concepts. So you don't have to know the subject. You can approach something and say, because you have a systematic way of thinking. So we want to raise thinkers. We want to raise people who will create businesses, who will come up with ideas that will improve the economic development of our country. And they also have those skills that they'll be able to get high-level, meaningful jobs. The unemployment rate in our country is huge. We have a lot of graduates, but not all of them have relevant skills. So for us, developing those skills from foundational years when they're young, just as they're learning their ABCs 1, 2, 3, they're learning creative thinking concepts.
This is a simple circuit, and it uses chemicals. It uses chemical to power up the LED light. When the switch is not on, the circuit is not complete, so the light doesn't come on. But when it's on, the light comes on. The different parts of this simple circuit is a battery holder, 2 AA batteries, LED lights, wires, and a switch.
STEM education focuses on logical thought processes and problem solving, allowing students succeed in any field. Building a strong STEM foundation now will set students up for success in future by challenging them to think critically and come up with their own solutions.
Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, with a population of more than 200 million people, has a sclerotic national grid of 4,000 megawatts at peak, leaving businesses and citizens heavily reliant on diesel power generators. But with diesel costs rising, especially amid the war in Ukraine, businesses are said to be increasingly abandoning generators for solar. The price of diesel, not subsidized like petrol, has nearly tripled to 800 naira a litre.
We are at the beginning of what is nothing shy but of a power revolution of turning to more renewables. But what is also important, it will never be only solar. We have to find an intelligent mix between solar and other sources of energy.
This spike in demand is coming especially from manufacturers who in the past would have preferred to run their businesses with diesel-powered generators, but are now trying to cut costs due to skyrocketing diesel costs. In a country where solar penetration is estimated at below 2%, the perception was that solar was not suitable for large-scale use. But that is changing as energy costs eat into company margins, forcing businesses to actively considering solar a clean form of energy.
Next year, the forecast is 48. So we expect to double our installation capacity for this year, next year, and the demand is there, right? So even based on the contracts we have so far, have enough signed contracts to meet the 24 for this year and even carry over to next year. So right now, it's a game of trying to also manage expectations with customers and let them know, okay, there is a bit of a backlog, but we are trying to see how we can accommodate it. And who knows, maybe that 24 megawatts may end up being 30 this year.
Delivery times for some equipment has risen from 3 months to as long as 9 months, and local financing has also been difficult to tie down as providers continue to rely more on overseas development financial institutions looking to invest in green energy.
A team of researchers in Japan have developed a snake-shaped robot that can climb up high steps, navigate through narrow spaces, and even give you a leg massage. The robot, which is 1.7 meters long and weighs 10 kilograms, has 17 joints equipped with distance sensors, gathering information to allow it climb steps up to 1 meter high.
The snake-shaped robot collects information from distance sensors that are mounted on the bottom of its body to climb up steps. These sensors can detect whether each wheel is on a step or is hanging in the air, so that the robot can move joints at the right time to avoid hitting the step.
Its mainframe was created using a 3D printer, and about 40 motors are installed inside. It can be controlled by a game console which gives instructions to the robot's head, so other parts of the body can take actions automatically calculated by computer programs. Tanaka said the robot was designed for finding survivors in collapsed houses or any narrow space in disaster areas where it is dangerous for human beings to go in. It can also help people to conduct simple tasks such as turning off water valve with an extra device attached to the top of the robot's head. While the snake-looking robot is flexible for crawling over different obstacles, Tanaka said that conditions in a real disaster site could still be very challenging for the robot to navigate at the moment.
Conditions in a real disaster site are extremely cruel. The robot may get stuck in situations that we didn't expect, such as being caught by wires or something like beddings that have less friction against the wheels. It's not good if the operation has to stop at a place where the robot can no longer move. So it is very important to come up with ways to help the robot recover from that state and to build an interface for maneuvering the system to support that.
His team is currently conducting research to make the robot fit better in real disaster rescue missions, and he aims to put the device into practical use in 3 years.
The Nigerian fintech industry recently has grown exponentially, attracting funding from both local and foreign investors. Even though there are recorded successes of startups in the sector trying to reach Nigeria's unbanked population by improving financial services, there appears to be a high percentage of the population that are still financially excluded. Dr. Yele Okeremi, CEO of Precise Financial Systems, shares his views.
If you take a look at the issue of financial inclusion, the conversations around financial inclusion tend to happen a lot more in economies that are less developed than in economies that are a lot more developed. And so we see that I think the real framing could have been economic inclusion rather than financial inclusion. Because I always say this, and I've said it on your platform a number of times, that it is impossible for you to financially include people who are economically excluded. So if you want to do the easy work of saying that we provided technology to give some more people access to financial services, that makes you look good. But the real heavy weight, heavy lifting work is how many people are we economically including? And if we include more people economically, financial inclusion will find its level.
And in your opinion, what are the factors affecting the growth of this financial inclusion?
In the past, it would have been how many banks or how many branches are close to people, particularly in the rural areas. But today, with the advent of financial technology or fintech, how many people are enabled to have access to electronic banking? So you say access is one of the issues that you can look at that particular point in time. How widespread is broadband? How easy is it for people to be known? Because one of the challenges we still have is that of identity. So banks and fintechs are obligated to know their customers. How much of this do they do? So those are some of the factors. If you look at the issue merely from the standpoint of financial inclusion.
Looking at our financial landscape in the country, how much improvement are we seeing with the rise of fintech companies and startups, like you mentioned? Like, what roles are they playing to help bridge these gaps?
The people we call fintechs, a whole lot of them are doing payments. So you take a look at what's going on in the fintech. I think I will be right. I don't have the statistics, but I think I think up to 70% of them will be doing payments. And you have a few of them who are doing other things like in the space of lending. And I hear a bit of traction in the space of insurance and stuff like that. So a whole lot of people are concentrating on payments. And the honest truth is that any country that wants to solve social challenges are not going to be solved by entrepreneurs and business people. Business people are going to seek profits. But if you want to solve social challenges, a whole lot depends on political leadership. And I'm not seeing so much. So the fintechs, you see a good number of them springing up. And if you want to do success stories merely by the number of fintechs that are springing up, then it's easy for you to say, oh yes, we are doing very well. But what problems are they solving? I think there's a whole lot more to be desired in that particular field, a whole lot more to be desired.
So are you saying the fintechs aren't doing enough in trying to bridge the financial gaps?
The fintechs are doing a lot to make money for themselves. But, of course, to paint a good narrative and to look good, of course, they would say that they are trying to, bridge financial gap. But let's take a real look at it. What are they doing? I've said it, a good number of them are doing payments. What is innovative about payment that NIPS has really not done? NIPS has done a whole lot of work in that space. So everybody is just trying to cut into that space. But I think the real work is in bringing people who are outside the banking sector into the banking sector. And That is real work. And if you want to do that, a whole lot of things have to happen.
You mentioned success stories of fintechs. Now we know that a couple of them have emerged as unicorns. Some of them have even made incredible strides, especially with the amount of funding they've received. At first, it was more of foreign investments dominating the space, but now we see local investors stepping up. How would you say we are doing in that regard?
The fintechs are doing well, making money for themselves, which is, if you ask many of them, they will tell you that their objective is to maximize the wealth of their shareholders. Their objective is probably not to solve some of the problems that you would, or the government would want them to solve. So to the extent that they are creating value for their shareholders, they are happy. And like you rightly said about investments, again, we are playing catch up, we are playing laggards. We have allowed the landscape to be dominated by foreigners. And just like you say, Nigerians, we are used to seeing or investing in things that we can see rather than things that we cannot see. And we've allowed foreigners to come and invest in things that we couldn't see. And now that it is becoming obvious to us, we are buying into those investments at a premium, things that we could have even got into probably at a discount or at par. We are now buying at a premium. And I'm also very worried about that because some of us may actually be buying into bubbles. But again, one of the important things I want to note is that the success stories of organizations shouldn't end by how much they are raising or how much they have. Quite a number of organizations, and I stand boldly to say, a number of organizations are raising money and cash to burn. A good number of them are raising cash and they're just burning this cash, hoping that over time they can write a narrative, they can create a narrative that creates something that makes them look like they can become a monopoly, which may be a mirage. So invariably, a good number of them are burning cash and they may never ever become profitable. So I see people invariably on the long run losing money. But I think one thing that never ever fails is where we see organizations creating value. So if I were, as an informed investor, to take decisions, I would rather take decisions on tech firms that are solving real life problems that can be sustained and that can be multiplied, rather than merely talking about tech firms that are raising loads of cash that are just being burnt in furnaces technically.
What about frameworks and policies for regulation of these tech firms? Do we have enough of them?
A lot is going on there. So you see the central bank, for example, trying very hard to ensure that things are going on well, because you have to understand the role of the central bank governor. The role of the central bank governor is to ensure financial stability. And of course, in ensuring stability, one factor that is very constant is trust. You see, every bank that is running is not just a business, it is trust because it involves public funds. So the central bank governor is always concerned about ensuring that fintechs and financial institutions do not go belly up. So they keep doing things. But of course, one of the things you have to appreciate is that regulations usually tend to lag behind innovation. But I see today that the central bank is trying, they have very smart people there who also are able to anticipate what may happen. But I think beyond what we are talking about, we tend to be overloading the central bank. We tend to overlabor them, and we are beginning to bring the central bank into domains that are ordinarily not supposed to be their areas. So ordinarily speaking, the job of the central bank governor is to ensure monetary policy stability, ensure that our exchange rate is good, ensure that inflation is under control, ensure that money supply is good. But when we are talking about the issues that I was talking about in terms of economic inclusion, those will have to be addressed through fiscal policies and social policies of government. These are things that no central bank governor has purview over. And so it doesn't matter how hard you work the central bank governor, if the ministers and the federal government, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economic Planning, the Ministry of Social Investments, and the Ministry of Trade are not doing their own bits, you're just going to be over-revving at the central bank, and you still will not get the kind of results you want to get.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
With all pleasure.
And it's a wrap on the show this week. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you're interested in keeping track of how tech-savvy innovators are crafting homegrown solutions using technology in the country, keep watching Tech Trends, because we will continue to showcase them, from startups to big techs and, of course, inventful thinkers. Don't forget, we're on social media at Tech Trends TV. You can also watch these and previous editions of the show on the channel's TV YouTube account. For Tech Trends, I'm Olayemi Odunuga. See you next time.